I didn't know that I was going to be a teacher. I actually thought I was going to be a writer. I was a reader, and I loved poetry and I loved books. And probably my favorite early memory is sitting at the kitchen table in Port Arthur, and I think probably my brother was napping, my little brother, and my sister was at school, and so I had my mother's undivided attention, and she taught me how to write poetry. And you know, and I just remember it felt like amazing, you know, like just because I'd read it, you know, I was a big fan of A.A. Milne and Robert Louis Stevenson and those kinds of poems, and just to learn how like the cadence and rhythm and rhyme worked, and so I started to write and wrote all the time. This is the book I wrote when I was 6 years old, and of poems and short stories. And this one is called Warm. It says, I like to be warm, not hot, not boiling, but warm. I like to be warm, not cold, not freezing, but warm. I was born in Minden, Ontario. My dad was a minister and of the United Church there. And we moved several times. We moved when I was 8 months to Thornhill, and then when I was 3 to Port Arthur, which is now part of Thunder Bay, and when I was 7 to Regina, Saskatchewan. And each time, you know, was because my dad was moving to a larger church and with greater responsibilities. And then when I was 8, my parents split up and I moved to Toronto, to Don Mills, and that's where I spent most of the rest of my childhood. I think that the ministry is a really difficult, demanding job. It's very service-oriented, you know, you're serving the community all the time. I think I grew up with a sense of words being important, and you're dealing with the big issues. And I remember being very young and thinking about the kinds of things like, you know, what is God, or what are we doing here? You know, what's the purpose? And I think that those things have filtered into my teaching, my adult life. You know, so I think it was a very profound influence on me. This quilt is one of my mother's many, many quilts, and it was because we were tossing around all the things you could do that use the word jack. So jack in the box and steeplejack and jack of hearts, and so all of the different things are on there. So she gave me this quilt. And this quilt I made for my daughter Grace, and it has a fairy theme, which suited Grace very much. She was 6 years old at the time, and a little fairy herself. My mother took up quilting when I was a teenager, and I wasn't actually initially that interested at all. And then but at some point, actually it was when I was doing my PhD, I started quilting, and it was fun, and it's like music. It's really good to have something to do that is not just intellectual, and playing with colors and thinking about design, it's like using a different part of my brain. I finished my first quilt at the same time as I finished my dissertation, and I think I was more proud of the quilt, actually. I think my interest in politics goes way back. I don't know why, but I was reading the Bolivian diaries of Che Guevara when I was in high school, and I think I just was interested in everything and in books. I think in terms of getting interested in politics, probably I was on Canada World Youth when I was 18, and we went to a small community, Musgrave Harbour in Newfoundland, and we went to Colombia in South America. And I really got a larger sense of the world and of the bigger issues in the world. And then I think I was also, you know, in the 1970s drawn to issues around civil rights questions. There was the growth of the feminist movement, and that certainly was an influence on me. And so when I was interested in politics, I was interested in those kinds of questions, and questions like, how does society work, and why are some people poor and some people not, and you know, what are the politics of race and class and gender and sexuality. And so when I started looking at political theory and reading political theory, it was those kinds of questions that I was interested in. How do we approach politics in order to understand power relations at a personal level, and in terms of just sort of daily interactions. I started at Carleton in 1978, and I wasn't actually initially in political science. I thought I wanted to do something very practical, and so I was very interested in third world development issues, and I decided I would take economics. But after 2 years, I got involved in student politics, and I wasn't actually enjoying my academic work, and the people I knew who were really excited about what they were doing were all in politics. And so I decided to switch and start taking politics credits. And it was almost like a calling. Like when I started taking political theory, I knew that that was how I thought. Grace was a very deliberate decision that I wanted to have a child, and I was in my mid-30s, and I decided to go ahead, and it's been incredible. She's a great person, and we have a really lovely relationship, and it enriches me. And she's 15 now, and we travel together. Every year we've done a road trip. So we've got that. We do a lot of reading together. So I've been able to share my love of books with Grace. It's just been it's the most amazing part of my life. And then there's my love of dogs. So I have Buddy. I've had him for almost 13 years. He came from the Humane Society, and before that I had a dog, Emma, who was also from the Ottawa Humane Society. They make you laugh. They make you come home every day, and they make you go outside a lot and go for walks, which is, again, one of my favorite things to do, is to go for walks. I go hiking, I go camping, and the dogs have been part of that. There's something about stripping away everything else from your life, all the things that you don't need, and being in nature, closer to the land. And I just feel more myself, actually, way more myself when I'm walking or hiking or canoeing. Yeah. My current interest is in property and how we think about what it means to own something. So I've gone to Scotland I'm on leave, and I'm at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm trying to do some further research in that area and push forward on publishing a bit. I'm there with my daughter and my partner, and so we're also looking around Scotland. It's an incredible country, beautiful country. What I like about teaching is that you really know if you understand something or not if you can explain it. And so I think it's a part of the learning process for me, is to figure out how I would explain it or how I would teach it. I love the classroom. I like the interaction. I like the dynamic of seeing people learn. You know, that sense when a classroom kind of comes alive with just even an individual, just even the sense that somebody out there is seeing the world a bit differently. One of the ways I keep teaching fresh is I keep teaching new things. Although the basic canon of political theory has stayed the same, you know, Plato, Aristotle, and so forth, and I do sometimes teach that. I also, I'm constantly learning new things. So my new project on property, you know, and I mentioned it's tied into questions of ownership. I'm very interested in environmental politics, and so that's also something which is always changing, and there's new things to learn. So I think my interest in a wide range of issues means that I'm looking always for new examples to bring into the classroom, new ways of explaining things. I spend a lot of classroom time not lecturing, but trying to create situations where the students are talking to each other or working on problems or working on projects, and I just circulate amongst them. And so that also keeps it fresh because I don't know what they're going to do. And so I have to be on the ball in order to respond to, what somebody says in a seminar or what somebody, what some group is coming up with in terms of problem solving. And so there's a freshness to that. So the lecture is probably the only place where there's a risk that it would go stale, but I'm, I never really give the same lecture twice. Every year I think of ways of changing it or refining it, hopefully making it better.